What's good, everybody? This is Dev the Coolest.
And this is Ray Bay.
And this is JB.
And welcome to SlickTalk. That's the best we ever did it.
Okay. DC3 Harmony.
Yes. Welcome to SlickTalk.
Oh, damn! Did they request that little sample of singing? They don't get that yet.
Ray, you got the top part. Welcome to SlickTalk. Okay, anyway.
I'm just playing. I'm not a singer.
Come on, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
That kind of shocked the shit out of me. This dude said, "Wow." I said, "What?"
What about you? You better hit a note.
No.
Oh God.
Not even a low,
Right, a very white.
You did enough for all three of us, right?
Well, someone asked us to talk about cultural appropriation.
Ooh. That's
Interesting.
deep.
So are y'all ready to talk about it? Y'all got y'all thoughts together for that?
For cultural appropriate, well, can we define what cultural appropriation means?
Some people don't know. That's why they do it.
Well, I will say there's a battle right now with people saying what cultural appropriation is. So on one side, people feel like it's a term created by social justice warriors to divide people, to keep people divided. And another definition, so taking aspects from minority culture for its aesthetics without knowing the meaning behind it. It is often controversial when appropriated cultures was exploited or oppressed by the person borrowing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think we can agree on, the three of us.
Yeah.
The latter definition being
right.
People from a minority.
Absolutely.
Culture. What examples can you guys think of that would fall in line with cultural appropriation?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing we can all kind of directly look at is what's going on in entertainment. Mm-hmm. I guess that's easy for us to look at and kind of get our ideas or have our opinions on what we think of, people that aren't necessarily in our community creating content or, whether it be music or television. Beauty or anything like that that doesn't necessarily come from us that turns out to be hugely successful, and that leads to the question on if we were to come out with the same content, would it be as successful? So I mean,
or why isn't it successful until
somebody else does it?
That's
why?
I mean, that's not even the question.
It's why does it seem exceptional when somebody outside of our community does it, and then when somebody from our community does it even better, they're not even looked at as if it's expected.
Well, the first person I think of that's been getting a lot of heat for it is Kim Kardashian, or the Kardashian clan in general, the Kardashian-Jenner clan.
Yeah.
All of them except for Kourtney have babies with black men.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have done things in the past that could be argued.
I don't even think that black. I think Kourtney kind of stays out the way, to be honest.
That's what I'm saying, except for Kourtney. She keeps it nice and cute. She doesn't like to be in front of the cameras and stuff, but the rest of them plumped their lips, got cornrows and called them some old other thing and attributed it to something else. I can't don't quote me exactly on what they said, but
yeah.
But that's what I think of, and there's a counter argument. Well, that's cultural appreciation. So where is that line drawn between cultural appreciation and appropriation for y'all?
Money.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Well, not necessarily just that. There's levels, but with celebrities, easily if they're using a culture outside of theirs to make money off of it. But you're not
they're not acknowledging where they got it from.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's when it would become appropriation.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the complete opposite. I think it is by now, and I think it has been an appreciation. I look at what they have surrounding them. What they promote, what they attend, what they are interested in, and. Kim, I see her always promoting her husband's brand, who is a black man. I see her promoting, other brands and other types of music that happen to be hip hop music, that is R&B music. Recently, she got somebody that was a minority out of prison. I think that's dope. So I think she's proven to be for the culture. I don't think she's the type of person, well, I don't think she is to go to like the opera and kind of be in that type of space, or to hang around executives or hanging out with white girls or anything like that. I think she keeps like people that are in our culture surrounded by her, and her husband's right there. You know, the same thing with Courtney. Like Courtney has a best friend that's black, and that's not necessarily saying that just because she has a black best friend that she's
exactly
that she does no, but that she's not appropriating. But I do believe that she's shown that she's for the culture, and that's why she feels comfortable with doing the things that she does, because she's like, I'm not just stepping in and plumping my lips and putting my ass fat. Like, I listen to this, you know, I stand up for this. Like, she's fought and went hard for people in our community. And the same thing with Kylie. Like, it's the same thing.
They're creating a culture.
They're creating a culture, and I see them, and they don't. And then you look at them, and it's not like they stand out or anything. When Kim Kardashian started, she was Paris Hilton's personal assistant, and they stayed in the clubs in Las Vegas, and hip hop clubs. We were playing hip hop and music and all that type of stuff. Kim Kardashian started off with Ray J, had a sex tape. That's a nigga, you know. Like, it's not like she started off, you know, with these white boys and was like Valley Girl and didn't have any idea of what our culture was. No, she started off with the culture. Their mom is fucking a nigga.
Well, okay. I was just look. I am
O.J. Simpson.
No, her boyfriend. No.
I thought you were talking about the rumors.
Well, probably that too.
Yeah,
I'm completely disagreeing with everything you're saying right now.
Okay.
Because
that's fine.
I think it's important for us to recognize that even though these people have black people surrounding them, they don't understand the struggles that those black people around them have gone through. And not just specifically black people around them, because there are still within a certain like social class, right? But what about the people that are in our regular communities that are ridiculed for having certain features that are celebrated on them, you know, and they don't recognize that? Or
so they have to recognize it in order to have an appreciation for these type of things?
We're talking about cultural appropriation altogether. I don't think you have an appreciation for basically how they're privileged, because the features that they have, a little black girl was ridiculed for having that. You know, or
and they still are being ridiculed.
Still, you know, or even wearing colored braids or wearing braids altogether. Like, for black women, if you go in a workplace with braids, they think of you as being too ghetto for the job. But you know, Kylie Jenner or, you know, Kim Kardashian wears it, and all of a sudden these magazines just want to celebrate them and stuff like that. But for you not recognizing that other groups are wearing the exact same hairstyle that you borrowed from. And they're being ridiculed for it, and you're being celebrated for it.
Who's to say they don't recognize it?
I didn't hear them talk about it.
Why do they need to discuss that? Because
if you are a public figure using somebody else's culture and being celebrated for it, you have a duty to talk about that culture.
I think that gets a little too deep. I think that they feel like they're in, you know, their presence enough in the culture is enough. I mean, technically, it's enough for some people.
I don't think they're present in the culture at all.
Well, let's bring it down to an everyday person.
Yeah.
So let's say if we saw a person of Latinx, you know, heritage wearing a dashiki, would we expect for them to explain to us the meaning behind the dashiki in order for us to be like, okay, they're not appropriating our culture? Or do we just like recognize it and we're like, okay, they're not appropriating because they're also a minority? Like, where I'm getting at is like going back to your example of they're on a larger platform, so there's kind of an expectation for them to be like, okay, since I do have this money and I am this popular, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm going to enlighten you on it. Are we holding everyday people to that same standard?
I mean, I definitely, I feel like if somebody, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, if you're doing this, I mean, obviously I understand that cultural appropriation happens, you know, but at the same time,
I've been doing it forever.
But at the same, hold on, let me finish my train of thought because she was not about to drop that queen's name and expect me not to reply. But let me finish my train of thought. Yeah, basically what I'm saying is that I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know, if you're wearing a dashiki, I'm not going to completely just question if you know the history behind it or believe that you don't. Yeah, some white people completely don't know, and those are the appropriators.
I'm saying some black people don't even.
Oh yeah, some black people don't. And then at the same time, it's like, is that technically the African American culture? You know what I'm saying?
Because like, dashiki is not the only thing they wear in Africa.
Exactly.
So anyway,
we don't wear it out here. We wear it for fashion. You know, and then we try to say that we're woke, and it's like, are you woke because you know? So that's one side.
I would say it happens. Yes, there's black people that wear dashikis don't know the meaning of it, but there's a lot of black people that wear dashikis because they know the meaning of it.
Obviously, I'm not taking that away at all, but let's not, you know, there's definitely that group of people that wear it because it looks good, you know, and don't have a clue about it as well. But going back to the topic, I personally wouldn't necessarily question, and as pro-black as I am, I'm not going to question somebody's reasons for wearing something with a thought in the back of my head that they don't know where it stems from. Okay. I mean, if their actions later on or throughout them wearing it show that they don't, then that's another discussion.
That's another hurdle.
But not just directly, you know, right, you know, in the beginning.
Well, I think you can appreciate the culture without taking components of that culture on. You know what I'm saying? Because I know a lot of people will be like, oh, well, I just do it because I like the way it is. Like, I'm trying to show respect for the culture. And it's like, okay, well, I understand that you appreciate it, but when you're using it for your personal benefit, like you're using it so that you can look cool, or you're taking components of different cultures so you can look different, quote unquote, then that's when you start to straddle the fence of appropriation. It's like, that's where you have to go back to Ray Bay's point. Like, you have to, like, I guess, clarify, like, I understand what this actually means.
Yeah, absolutely.
With regard to the entertainment business, in the music industry, how do y'all feel? Like, I've been seeing it a lot more in a lot of different videos. So that I don't sound biased, yes, Nicki Minaj did do it in her Chun-Li video, but don't come for me, Beehive. I'm a part of it, but I do have to call a spade a spade. Queen Bee, she did, and what was that?
Him for the Weekend.
Him for the Weekend with
by
Coldplay. Yeah, and she, you know, she was like dressed as an Indian or whatever.
An Indian goddess.
An Indian goddess.
Yeah. A Hindu goddess.
A Hindu, but like, so. What do we expect for them to do though?
That to me is appropriation as well. I was actually very disappointed when I saw that video. I just saw like this battle online on appropriation, or Beyonce appropriates, and I literally like looked up the video and watched it, and I was like, wow, I can't believe that she did it. You know, she did that.
So what would have been the course of action that they should have taken to avoid falling in the category of appropriating?
Not do it.
Not do it.
Not do it.
That's
period.
Point blank from jump. Don't do it.
And, I mean, same thing. Like, I think Rihanna also did Princess of China with Coldplay. Basically, black women stop making videos of Coldplay. Period. That's the
Coldplay gonna get y'all fucked up.
That is the lesson you should get out of it. But yeah, I think both of them should have never agreed to do this video.
But do you think it's because of ignorance though, like, or they just don't know? Right? Or do you think they knew? And
I don't know. But I think like when you've been in the industry for a certain amount of time, and you've seen other celebrities get backlash for things like that before, I don't know the thought process. But I was just very disappointed seeing two of my favorites, you know, my faves, do those videos.
I think we definitely have to give artists and some, you know, celebrities and musicians and stuff like that a little leeway when it comes to certain creative ideas. Like, I think that these were creative videos. I feel like they were videos based upon, you know, the song and the lyrics that they were right there. I think, you know, once we start trying to limit the content that people are putting out because we feel like it's appropriating, you know, a specific culture, is not good. You know, they're coming out with videos that are showing an appreciation for the culture that aren't necessarily living that life. So I feel like there's a difference of putting out some content and some artistry of a culture and appreciating it, as opposed to actually walking that life and actually, real life appropriating it. It's just like, for example, a movie. I mean, what's really the difference of a movie of people that someone that is not actually African? Like, say, for example, there's a person that's playing, an African in a movie, and he's really not, African. Can we say that he's technically appropriating in that fantasy movie because, he's playing this role as an African when he's really in Africa, when he's really not African? Like, why couldn't they find...
Or white people play Asians a lot.
Or white people play Asians.
Different because...
It all falls under artistry, though.
If you look at black people that live in America, we are Africans. And that's...
But my point was is that it's still artistry. Like, a movie is a movie. A music video is just that. A music video is not somebody actually living. Beyonce was not really living and, walking down the street or at home in Indian garb. She was in a video for our entertainment. The same thing with Nicki Minaj with Chung Lee. Like, she has a song that's called Chung Lee. Do you guys know who Chung Lee is?
Yeah.
Okay. So she has a song called Chung Lee.
Can you enlighten me?
It's the Street Fighter. The the villain.
I knew.
She's not a villain.
She's the one
That's another reason why I didn't really care. I didn't really get that video concept.
She was the one with the thick thighs.
Yeah.
I said, yes, Chun Li.
She was my favorite. I used to whoop ass with Chung Lee.
Listen, it's it goes into a fact of who that is and the culture that Chung Lee comes from. And it was a music video. It's a song. It goes with the whole theme. Just like in the song with Coldplay, it goes with the whole theme and everything like that. So that's just like, if he came up with the song, we supposed to be on the beach, like having a margarita, or the same thing with Nicki Minaj. She's supposed to be at an all-white background. It's creative, artistic. It's like ideas. Like,
find another idea. That's what I say, because you also have to look at.
He's like, no,
you have to understand how people that come from that culture feel. Like, their cultures.
I don't think they're thinking too deep about it.
You might want to ask first before you say that.
I said I don't think.
Okay, because the backlash I saw online came from them.
It came from people that probably don't even live there. I'm sure it's probably people like, oh, this is offending. You know how we can.
Do you know for sure?
I don't know for sure.
Okay, then here we go.
Like, we don't know for sure at all.
But we're debating on the topic, which is the appropriation that she did, which people that come from that culture, their own cultures couldn't cross over, and they could make money off of it themselves. But you have a big person, like a big celebrity, just come through with their culture and make money off of it.
They're not making money off of the song. I mean, they're not making money off of Beyonce dressing up in Indian garb. There was a song. They're not making money off the video coming out. They're making money off the song.
It's somebody using their deities on screen, and that is not something that they approved of. Period. Like, for us, when we see, you got another white person playing, an Egyptian in a movie, we get pissed off because we've always been basically, we can't be seen. Like, we don't get to celebrate our own history or our stories or deities and everything like that. But you have this white person playing Egyptian god, and everybody understands that backlash. But when Beyonce is using their Hindu goddess, I mean, for me, I felt uncomfortable watching it. And I know people from that culture probably were pissed off. So I just think that she was wrong for doing it. She was wrong for going along with it. I mean, you're Beyonce. You do not have to do that. And I was so upset when I saw it. And same thing for Rihanna. They did not have to do it.
So was she appropriating Hispanic culture when she sung in Spanish and danced with Shakira and twirled her hips and everything? Was she appropriating Hispanic culture too? Is she not allowed to do anything outside of our culture?
Singing in Spanish and twirling their hips, African people twirl their hips, one, and there's also black people that.
So was she allowed to do all that though, even though that's not where her culture comes from?
Speaking a different language with a celebrity that is from that culture is different from using somebody else's culture and you don't have a celebrity singer that is actually Indian.
So it's technical.
No,
it has different layers.
If you had first of all, I don't agree with you putting on a goddess uniform in a video where that culture is not represented. One, if the singer at least was, if it was a Bali music video, if it was at least that, that could have made a difference.
Well, it sounds like just based off of both of your examples and what you guys brought to that aspect of the conversation, or that part of the conversation, is that it's very situational.
Yeah,
and we have to be critical within that situation and analyze whether or not it was. If it had its due diligence for that culture, if it did its thing. I don't know exactly what B could have done in that context or in that space to show that she understood what it is or why it exists. But I think that's what it boils down to, is that it's very situational and we have to be critical within those situations.
So do we have my question is not to cut you off, do we have any examples of, so we know an example of appropriation from Ray. Do we have an example of an appreciation of a culture? So we can kind of put in perspective like the difference of the two. So I can have
what was that music video of Michael Jackson? The Black, or not that one. We are the world.
Was it
we are the yeah. Was it Michael Jackson? But it was some video. I don't know now. I'm sounding all confused.
No, so what was
there was some music video that he showed the different cultures, but he allowed the people from that culture to represent. He allowed them to be in their own element, and that was more of an appreciation in that sense.
Even still, I mean, that song was "We Are the World."
Right,
so
but I guess,
if he did it, that would have been
that's an example of
absolutely.
Appreciation. I think what's fuzzy is jumping to the fact that they don't appreciate, or whether or not it's appreciation or appropriation. I think that's what's just really fuzzy, because like appreciation is, I think, intent, and appropriation is action. Let's all play devil's advocate for a second and say we are the majority and we see it as a term of division. Can you see that? Like,
I can definitely see how it could be. I mean, obviously, I just, we live in a world right now where everything is wants to be politically correct and everything like that. So I'm very conscious of like labeling, something as just appropriation real fast, so I can totally see why people can see that it can be divisive, but at the same time, playing the devil's advocate, but still understanding that there's, appropriation happening, daily, and it's not right, so.
Ignorance is not an excuse.
And I know sometimes like appropriation happens without people even realizing it is. Like
people
are raised
where the ignorance comes
in that culture, and then they get to a point where they have the opportunity to make money off of that culture. So if you look at certain artists like, you look at Eminem and you look at Bruno Mars, you can tell that they grew up in areas with predominantly black people.
I kind of walked the line. I feel like I really walked the line with Bruno Mars, especially after hearing a conversation that was had on the Grape Juice on YouTube, where they were discussing.
Sis said some shit.
No, it's a whole group. It was a whole group of them. They had a whole conversation of was Bruno Mars an appropriator? Like, was he appropriation? Like, was he committing appropriation and stuff like that? I think majority of the people were saying that he wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, majority of the people saying that he wasn't an appropriator. And then there were like, a few people that were like, oh no, he's appropriate. So I was going back and forth, but both sides made some great points. Obviously I come with my own conclusion, which is I believe that, maybe he is. You know what I'm saying? Like if I had to give a direct answer, he said that he gives appreciation, and when he gives his speeches and when he has these conversations, he mentions these black artists and these R&B artists and everything like that. But I feel like with the platform that he has, he could take it even further. He can start doing collaborations with black artists. I know he did one with Cardi B, but I don't know anybody else that he could have brought in. He could have did a collaboration with Jasmine Sullivan, who was one of the great vocalists of our time, and that would have just killed everything. Absolutely. It's like do things that are detrimental and conducive to the culture,
Not
as opposed to just
detrimental.
speaking on it. Not detrimental. Do things that are conductive.
that help the culture move forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That help it move forward, as opposed to, I mean, because we're expecting you to give thanks to the culture because you're singing our songs and
Right.
everything like that. So of
That's
course
when
that's come.
because if you don't, that's when we're going to start feeling like
Exactly.
you're stealing from us, and then that's when it gets
Exactly.
into
So you're doing all the
appropriation.
right things. That's natural for you
I
to
think
come.
you hit a really good point there, like of what are you doing for the culture?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like you have the look of the culture, you're taking aspects of it, but what are you doing for the culture?
Yeah.
What are you putting back into
And
it?
for me, that would be the
That'll be
way
the thing
of,
for me.
you know.
Even doing something for the culture, you got to realize that you start becoming an author for the culture, and you're not necessarily from it.
Absolutely.
I don't want my author to be from that, though. I mean, my authors are not, you know, really popular R&B. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Like,
Yeah, for you, but you have to understand, like, that person that you're saying, okay, even though they're not from our culture, what are you doing for the culture? That's now he's gonna look at as somebody to speak for Black people.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the person. I guess where I'm getting at with that is you don't have to speak for my culture.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't have to speak for my culture, but if you're going to be utilizing components of it, then you're going to have to make sure you're putting something into it. You're going into the quote unquote inner cities, and you're going and you're speaking, and you know what I'm saying?
standing up for injustices,
You're standing up for
saying
injustice.
Black Lives Matter,
Exactly.
using your voice.
Prison reform, like stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Absolutely.
if you're doing that, then it's like, okay, like you see the culture as well, and you're doing what you can. As far as being a voice for the culture, I don't think that they can do that because that's not their lived or that's just not their experience.
Yeah.
Do we think appreciation is better than appropriation then?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Nope.
and there's a second part to that question. So giving back to the community would let us know that they are appreciating the culture instead of just making money off of the culture and taking it. That would be more so appropriate. And we're talking
that
on
would
a
definitely be a huge step.
Yeah, we're talking on a very high level. Like we're speaking like entertainment, like people that we see in the media all day, every day. We're not even speaking on people that we see walking down the street.
Yeah.
And then we could be talking about appropriating any type of culture. It could be a gay culture. Could you say that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And the hyphy movement.
And the hyphy movement. There's several different cultures that can be appropriated.
I can tell you're not from the Bay Area. If somebody come in here acting like they from the Bay Area and start acting quote unquote hyphy. First off, if you say you're hyphy, then I know you're not from the Bay Area because nobody just says that anymore.
Okay.
But
that died out in 2009. 2009,
but then I can
2010.
tell when your thin face is off.
Okay.
But
When you do your little hand and do your little arm moment.
right,
move.
exactly. But it's like, don't do it.
Yeah.
At that point, just don't do it, child.
Do you see anything going on in your neighborhood that you'd be like, well, you know, because I know everybody in the neighborhood is not, you know.
Well, one thing we didn't talk about is appropriation versus assimilation. I think I see a lot more assimilation in my community than anything else right now. We had an episode about gentrification and people coming in, and I do see some new faces coming into our community, but I think they're assimilating to how our community is because we are the majority of the people that have been there for a little while. But I don't really see any appropriation in my community personally.
That's something I see down the street. You know, I've
Okay.
seen white women in dreads all the time, and to me, it baffles me because I would understand if you're at least from the Rastafari movement, because I know that went global, but just some people do it because they think like that's just a style, and
Yeah. I know Rastafarian is like this whole, it was like a movement and everything else, but the point that really hits home for me is like, well, what were we all doing before brushes and combs? You know what I'm saying? Like, what were we all, like, what were they doing with their hair before brushes and combs? Everybody's hair was getting matted back in the day. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yes, it's a style, but at the same time, we can't necessarily claim that specific thing as our own, in my opinion.
And we got to watch out, too, with saying, hey, they can't do that because they don't know the history behind it. When we do a lot of shit and we don't even know our own history behind it. So how about you do your history and then you could point the finger and say, hey, these people can't.
Yeah.
Because people love pointing fingers at other people because, you know, they're up in arms because they're not supposed to do it, but they're doing that just to get up, you know, just up in arms.
I think that we can't say that because you got to understand how we were broken from our history and
still broken. Mm-hmm.
And therefore, us trying to reconnect in certain ways that we can to make us feel as black as possible. Because the truth is, black people struggle with not knowing, you know, their history like 100 years back, or not knowing family members' names.
Absolutely.
A certain part. So to be able to connect something larger, that's a little bit. You know that's where you come from, even though you can't pinpoint a specific place in Africa, you know, but you know that makes me feel a little bit more, you know.
But calling out other ethnicities for doing something, it shouldn't start with doing that. It should start within our community. It should start with us doing our research. It should start with us knowing while we're doing stuff. It should start with us knowing our history, and then we can move forward. But that's the problem, is that we're quick to point out a different ethnicity and say, "Hey, you're not supposed to do that, and you're doing this," and da 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 da.
So it's like, you can't call it appropriation if you don't know what you're talking about yourself, huh?
Exactly. It was just like, I mean,
because somebody else said it.
Because somebody else said it, or because we know of it to be wrong.
Or we know it to be a certain way.
I disagree. I'm going to call out somebody who's not from a culture using the other culture. I mean, for us, you can say that it should start with our community, but I think that even if you don't know about your history, you can still be protective of your culture before you let somebody else use it for their own gain.
I get that aspect.
I guess,
absolutely.
But with that point, though, it's like, you can understand things in a cultural sense, but you can also understand things from a historical sense. Because history, I would say 9.5 times out of 10 will trump cultural when it comes to this specific topic. Because if we're going to talk about, going back to the point of dreadlocks, it's like, okay, once upon a time, everybody had dreads. So yes, the Rastafarian culture came into play a lot later once combs and brushes were already here. But if we're going to start talking about in a historical sense, once upon a time, we all had dread. So then that's like, okay, so are they appropriating a culture? Are they saying like, oh, I'm doing it because I saw a Rastafarian doing it? Or because they can argue, well, my ancestors did this, but this is how my ancestors' hair was. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's kind of that becomes a thing as well. Does a black culture appropriate African culture?
I feel like at times.
Yeah, at times. I think sometimes you'll see black people wear traditional garments that they don't understand the symbols that are on it, and it means a specific thing. So to Africans, you look ridiculous. But I also understand, like, black people's basically them trying to connect to another culture, or trying to even just seem Afrocentric in a sense. But yeah, you do want to do some research. But not doing research and just going out and wearing something, it's something that a lot of us are guilty of, you know, because it looks cool, we're just gonna do it. And yeah, if somebody wants to call it out, they have absolutely every right to do it.
So do you give people that do that, you know, something that we don't, you said it just for what you said right now, we don't really think about the things that we do when we wear it or anything
That's
like
true.
that. So in that kind of setting or that aspect, do you kind of give a little pass at all to those people?
I do, to a point, yes. I understand both sides. I understand if you look at the African experience, it's very different from other cultures, you know, because being ripped away from your homeland and put here, and you're still trying to figure out your identity as a people.
So you're creating something from scratch.
Exactly. So you're borrowing on something, yes, you might not understand because you don't understand the language, you don't understand the symbols. I get it. But also for the people from your homeland that are like, we're trying to keep this sacred, and the way you're using it is misrepresenting it.
Right.
So I understand both sides. So I think this is a conversation that Africans and African Americans need to have, and also for Africans to understand that sharing your culture with black people is something that you probably should do a lot more.
It's important
because stop separating each other like, oh, we don't, you know. I mean, Caribbean people and African Americans kind of had the same issue, you know, but yes, you got to share your culture because it's theirs as well.
Well, all in all, don't appropriate shit. No, have some respect for the culture and understand what you're doing before doing it, and don't do it just to look cool. Don't do it to be quote unquote different, because you're not being different. You're just stealing something that you saw that you thought looked cool and making it mainstream.
Or if you do end up in a situation where you feel like you could be appropriating something, and you deep down appreciate it, do your research,
understand what you're doing. Just understand what you're wearing.
Yeah.
And also understand that some people, grow into these things. We get mad a lot from certain generations doing things a certain way, but people are growing.
Evolving,
learning, and not understanding that a lot of things they're doing is sacred to someone else, and the way they're using it is not supposed to be just a fad.
A fashion statement. Yeah.
And last for me is giving people a little breathing room to just be who they are. As long as they're just authentically themselves in their space, just let them be who they are. Just give them a little breathing room until you see them go over that edge.
Right.
Right.
It's
a little breathing
bring it back,
room.
Sis. That's
bring it back, because this has crossed the line. But we understand that you are an individual.
Yeah.
And you are who you are.
Yeah.
We don't need to be too PC. Just watch what the fuck you do.
Right. Tread lightly. Tread lightly.
That was Whitney Houston. Anybody know that? When Whitney Houston was on the phone with Whitney Houston. Just watch what the fuck you say, Wendy. That's all. Just watch what the fuck you say.
That's her soul. I miss Whitney, child. She was the queen of reading. But anyway,
she was.
Or cigarette in her
head. But once again, y'all, this is SlickTalk.
Yes. And JB and Ray and Dev the Coolest.
And we really appreciate y'all and
tuning in and being supportive. Please comment, like, subscribe. Give some feedback. Give us some ideas of topics to discuss. Let us know if you agree with us, if you disagree with us. Educate us on things that we didn't mention, on things that we need to know.
Come on. We'll have a guest on very soon, so stay tuned for that.
Yes, sir. Surprise guest.
All right, y'all. Have a good one. We love y'all.
Peace out.
Peace. Bye.